Hello booktube, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome back to my channel, Book as in Books. I want to start this video by thanking all of you who left comments under my previous video about Alice. It was very touching and I'm going to answer them very soon, so thank you all for leaving comments. And now, in this video, I want to talk about Jane Austen July and my somewhat pile of possibilities. I say somewhat because it's the possibilities are rather short. There's not many possibilities, and actually I've already finished reading 2 books for Jane Austen July, so it's a bit of a wrap-up at the same time, which is something that can happen when a booktuber films their pile of possibilities in the middle of the month. Well, it's not quite the middle, it's 1 week into Jane Austen July, so you have plenty of time to join if you have not yet. So what is Jane Austen July? It is a readathon hosted by Katie from Books and Things, Melissa from Blatantly Bookish, and Claudia from Spinster's Library, where they invite us to read Jane Austen. So it's all about Jane Austen during the month of July. There are several prompts. The most important, the main prompt, is to read one of Jane Austen's main novels. I've read them all, so for me it's a reread. The question was, which one would I reread? The group is reading Sense and Sensibility, and I thought, okay, perhaps that's a possibility, Sense and Sensibility. The first time I read it, I was a bit disappointed. I was reading it for the romance, and somewhat the romance in Sense and Sensibility is disappointing because we are left with the feelings that both heroines deserve better. And then I read it for a second time, and then the humor came out, and I thought it was just so funny. It was just the funniest Jane Austen novel. It is hilarious. And particularly Marianne, I thought she was just such a funny character. A bit despite of her, she's a bit of a caricature of the romantic heroine who has feelings, so many feelings, and she must behave according to her feelings. And it was so funny. So I thought, okay, what is another novel of Jane Austen that could benefit from a rereading, just to see the humor in it more? And I thought Mansfield Park. It is often considered the most serious of Jane Austen's novel, and to me it is so serious compared to the other ones. So I thought, okay, perhaps I'm going to reread Mansfield Park. So that was a bit my choice, Mansfield Park. And then there's another prompt for Jane Austen July, that is to read a non-fiction about Jane Austen or her time. And I thought, okay, I'm going to skip that prompt. Instead, I'm going to read an annotated version. In particular, I think in Mansfield Park, there's a lot of context. I think there's more material for notes in Mansfield Park than for some others. Perhaps I could be wrong because I've never read an annotated version. So I don't have an annotated version of Mansfield Park or any other Jane Austen novel, so I went to the library. And the Ottawa Public Library has annotated versions for 4 of Jane Austen novels, and the 2 for which they don't have copies are Mansfield Park and Sense and Sensibility. So I thought, well, okay. Nevertheless, I have another possibility. My card gives me access to another library, which is the Library of the University of Ottawa, and they have a literature department, so they will have annotated versions of Jane Austen, right? And they have annotated versions of 4 of Jane Austen's novels. The 2 not having annotated versions are Sense and Sensibility and Mansfield Park. So I was a bit disappointed. The annotated versions that they had though at the library, they were just gorgeous. Now this is just an ugly yellow cover. Well, it's not, yeah, it's rather ugly. It's just a yellow cover. The dust jacket has been removed. That's what the university does. It just removes the dust jacket, so they save on the work of covering the dust jackets and on the cost of wrapping them and all of that. But the inside, oh, the inside is just so gorgeous. So you have the text in the middle. I don't know if you can see. So you have the text in the middle and notes and images like on the right. So here you have notes on actually a full page, and just the text is just this. And most often you have text on 2 pages and the notes on the side, and it's just on beautiful. The paper has a very nice feel to it, and there are several images, and it's just such a gorgeous copy. So I think I'm going to read this. So this is Pride and Prejudice. So I think I'm just going to read this one instead. And I think I'm going to buy all the books in that collection. I've already looked for Pride and Prejudice. It's out of print. It's out of print, so I'm going to leave information in the description box in case you're interested in that particular edition. It is edited by Patricia, Meyers, Spacks, by the Belknap Press of Harvard University Press, Cambridge, Massachusetts, London, England, and it dates from 2010. So this one is 14 years old. And I've looked online for all the entire collection, and guess what? There are 5 that are published, and the one missing is Mansfield Park. It was not meant to be, I think. I was not meant to read an annotated version of Mansfield Park this year, so I think I'm just going to reread Pride and Prejudice. So that's going to be for my main, the main prompt. And it's going to do for the prompt of reading a nonfiction about Jane Austen, because I think the notes are so extensive that it counts as an entire book. So that's going to be that. So a second prompt, or a third prompt, is to read one of Jane Austen's minor works. And I think I'm going to skip that one because I don't feel like it. Yeah, I just don't feel like it. And then there's a fourth prompt, that is to read a book by a contemporary of Jane Austen. And for that, I'm just going to take a little swim across the channel, because it says contemporary. That's just about time. It's not necessarily about place. So I'm going to read a French author, François-Rene de Chateaubriand, and I'm going to read Atala. So this one is we have sort of one novella and one short story, I guess, because Atala is about 100 pages at most, and Rene is just 50 pages. The book is thicker because there's a lot of extra material, like earlier versions and a chronology of the author and a bunch of notes and context, and there's just a lot of extra material. But the novel itself, it's not even a novel, it's a novella. It's about 100 pages of Atala. So this one is a work of very much belonging into the romantic literary not trend, but literary, whatever. I cannot find my words this morning. It's a very romantic work. So there's a lot of, I was thinking about the book, and I was thinking, okay, there's a lot of shun in there. There's passion, there's salvation and perdition, and I think I haven't read the book. And there's exotic location. So it's a very, very much emblematic or representative of what the romantic movement was. So this one is set in Louisiana, so in New Orleans, in Louisiana, so the south of North America. And these are images by Gustave Doré. So the Gustave Doré did not illustrate the original edition, because this was published in 1802-3. And yeah, the Gustave Doré came later. But this one was for publication later in the century, like I don't remember the year. And yes, some of them are reproduced in this book. Not that many, apparently. Come on, Gustave Doré. Little images. Okay, here and here. Okay, apparently they're all at the beginning. But anyway, so that's my candidate. Well, my only candidate, so my choice, I guess, for a contemporary of Jane Austen. And now there are also 2 other prompts about movies, like adaptations. I'm going to skip them. I skip them pretty much every year because I'm not much of a movie person. So that leaves just 1 prompt, and that is to read a retelling of Jane Austen or a historical novel set during the time of Jane Austen. And for that, I've already read 2 books. So this is the wrap-up part of my video. So I've read 2 books that are retellings of Jane Austen. They are not historical novels set in the time of Jane Austen. They are retellings, and they are about the characters of the novels. So the first one is Pride and Perjury by Alice McVeigh. So this one I found on NetGalley. So NetGalley is a place where you just create an account, and you can request for books that have not been published yet, or just have been recently published. And the expectation is that you're going to write a review about it on NetGalley, but also on other bookish websites such as Goodreads or the Storygraph or BookTube. And so basically, in exchange for the publicity, they give you access to a book. And generally, you have to request a copy, but in the case of Pride and Perjury, it's available to all. So if you have a NetGalley account, you can just grab the book and read it if you want to. There's no requesting involved in there. So this is a collection of short stories, 12 short stories, based 9 of them on the world of Pride and Prejudice and 3 of them on the world of Emma. They come and sort of not fill gaps, but they tell the story from a different point of view, and sometimes they fill the gap of what was this character doing or thinking at that particular time when they were not on the page. So it's very much for fans of Jane Austen. So if you have not read Pride and Prejudice, if you have not read Emma, don't read this, because there's no point. That's my main issue with most Jane Austen retellings. It's that they do not stand on their own. So this one, for example, the first short story is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice from the point of view of Mrs. Hill, the housekeeper at Longbourn. So we have her diary, but it's like the entire book of Pride and Prejudice in 25 pages. It's a lot. So, of course, the characters of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet and Mr. Darcy, they cannot be fully described in a short story of 25 pages. So the author relies on the fact that you know these characters from the previous book. So, and also it's full of spoilers for Pride and Prejudice and Emma. So if you have not read them, well, now you know how they end. And it's very much made for readers of Jane Austen. And in a way, it's not good, like in the sense that if I was to write a book, I would like to think that anyone could read it. And in this case, in the case of this book, that's not it at all. It's targeted specifically at fans of Jane Austen. But on the other hand, it's wonderful that there are so many Jane Austen fans that an author could decide, okay, I'm just going to write a book specifically for that audience that anyone outside that precise audience will not understand, and it's going to do well. And there's something amazing about that. So, so that's the obvious weakness of the book, is that you have to have read Pride and Prejudice and Emma. There's also another risk in retellings of Jane Austen, and this one, it happens just once. So there are 12 short stories. They are not equally interesting, in my opinion. Some of them are more interesting than others. Some of them are better made than others. In fact, the ones that I like the most are about the very minor characters, the ones who don't speak. For example, one of the stories in this book is about the character of Mr. Perry in Emma, who is the apothecary who never speaks in Emma. And here he has his own short story. So it's kind of fun to hear this character talk and have a new character who is standing on his own, because we don't have to have read Emma to enjoy this character. However, there's another short story that, in my opinion, doesn't work because the character does not match at all my reading of that character in Pride and Prejudice. So it is a retelling, again, of Pride and Prejudice in an entire short story, so in 25-30 pages, from the point of view of Caroline Bingley. So a diary of Caroline Bingley. And in my opinion, that Caroline Bingley does not match my Caroline Bingley, because in that book, she's somewhat stupid. She's not, I think the author wanted her to be naive, but she doesn't come out as naive. She comes out as stupid, and I don't like it, because Caroline Bingley is not stupid. She goes about seducing Mr. Darcy the entirely wrong way. But the reason that in that particular short story, she receives advice from her older sister, Mrs. Hurst, on how to seduce Mr. Darcy. And basically, Mrs. Hurst tells her, stop agreeing with him all the time, stop fawning all over him, stop complimenting him all the time. You do it just a bit, like no more agreeing with him, no more than 3 times a day. And the reason why Caroline receives this advice in this short story is because she's just too dumb to realize it. But I think in the book, the reason why she behaves that way, that she flatters him, is that because it's how she likes to be treated. She likes people to flatter her. She likes to be complimented on her penmanship. She likes people to think that she's so smart, and she likes people to agree with her. So that's why she treats Mr. Darcy like that. And that is not a stupid way to go about things. So I don't like the idea of Caroline Bingley being stupid. So that short story I don't agree with. But anyway, I'm going to let you read the book if you want to. I'm not going to say more about it, just to say that it's enjoyable. It's not, some retellings are just awful, and I've read some of them that are just dismal, and I left the book reading, why did I waste my time reading something that bad, that was obviously that bad from the beginning, yet I kept continuing just because it's relating to Jane Austen. That's not the case in this book. It's good. If your expectations are not too high, it's good, because it's not Jane Austen. It doesn't come even close to being Jane Austen, but it's okay. They're good. So it's I don't put stars on reviews, but I suppose it would be a 3 stars. It does the job. Nothing more, nothing less. Next one. Next one. So it is The Late Mrs. Willoughby by Claudia Gray. So this one is a murder mystery, and it is the second in a series. So in the first book of the series, we meet what will be our two sleuths, which are Juliet Tilney and Jonathan Darcy. Now, if you don't know these characters, it's because these characters do not exist in Jane Austen. They are the children of the Jane Austen characters. So obviously Jonathan Darcy is the eldest son of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet, and Juliet Tilney is the eldest daughter of Catherine Morland and Henry Tilney of Northanger Abbey. They find themselves in the first book in the same house party as basically all the other main characters of Jane Austen's novels. So in the first book, we see reunited in the same house Mr. Knightley and Emma, Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth, Henry Tilney, the Tilneys are not there. It's just Juliet that is there. We see also Captain Wentworth and formerly Elliot, Edmund, what's his name? Fanny Price and her cousin Edmund something from Mansfield Park, Bertram? Yeah, I think that's it. And who else? There's a fifth couple. I'm missing one. Am I missing one? Oh, Colonel Brandon and Marianne Dashwood, but then Brandon. So these are the couples that we see in the first book. And the first book is the murder of Mr. Wickham. So Mr. Wickham is there also, and he dies. And the question is, who did it? And anyway, so the two teenagers in the house, the only two teenagers in the house sort of get together and they decide to solve the murder mystery. So this is the second. So this is the follow-up. And if you have not read the first, I think you're going to be a bit lost. It's the main fault of this book is that it assumes that you have read the first one. For one thing, it tells you the solution of the first one. So it's in the continuity of the first one. So after the events of the first book, Juliet Tilney becomes friend with Marianne Brandon, so formerly Marianne Dashwood, and in this book she's invited to stay for a while with Marianne and Colonel Brandon. And at the same time, Jonathan Darcy is invited to stay with a former school friend who happens to be Mr. Willoughby. So they are all in that village. So the book assumes that you have read the previous one, that you know who Juliet is, that you know who young Mr. Darcy is, that you know the events of the first book. It also assumes that you know the timeline that Claudia Gray has created. Because, of course, the novels of Jane Austen, they are all independent from one another. Having all these couples reunited in the same house, it's not really supposed to happen. So Claudia Gray had to assume quite a bit of things to make this possible. And she created a timeline in which Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet are sort of the eldest couple of all the Jane Austen novels, that in fact their story happens in the 1790s and not at all in the 1810s, not at all during the Regency. And according to that timeline, the latest story would be that of Sense and Sensibility, if I remember correctly, because that's a fault of the book. That timeline is not explained at all in the second book. It assumes that you read the first book and that you remember the first book, which in my case was so. I remembered it approximately, but it's a murder mystery. It's not something that I read and reread and reread, and the facts just disappear, and I just keep the essential in my memory. So I could not really remember. So at first, I was struggling with the idea that Mr. Jonathan Darcy could be almost as old as Marianne Dashwood. There was something not fitting in my mind until I remembered, oh yeah, she changed the timeline. So there's that. The second thing about that book that you may or may not like is that it has a very young adult feeling to it. As I mentioned, our two sleuths I said teenagers. It's not quite true because young Mr. Darcy is 21. That is something that I said just at the end of the book. And I could not remember, so I read the entire book thinking that he was 19, which is, obviously I was wrong, he's 21, but I read the entire book thinking he was 19, and it sort of fit with his behavior in a way. So I'm going to keep calling them teenagers, and Juliet Tilney is 17. So So this is kind of a trope of young adult novels, is that teenagers are entrusted, well, not so much entrusted, they take upon themselves in this case, to do a job that adults should be competent at doing, but for some reason the adults are just completely incompetent, so it's the teenagers who have to solve the problem. So there's that's obviously an aspect of young adults ish thing in this book. But the other is that I said that young Mr. Darcy was invited by Willoughby because they were school friends. There's a group of 4 young men there at Allenham, but they are not really school friends. There are 2 bullies and 2 bullied. So again, a trope of young adult novels. So it's there's a young adult feel to the book. That being said, it doesn't matter at all because it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the book. In this one, I did not have any issues of thinking, well, this character doesn't quite behave the same way they behaved in Sense and Sensibility. All the characters from Sense and Sensibility that are in this book, and there's a lot of them, basically all of them show up at some point. They behave in the exact same way, or not in the exact same way, but it is consistent with their behaviors in Sense and Sensibility. So the characters are consistent with the original, with the canon, I'm going to say. So for that reason, it works as a retelling because the characters are consistent, and the new additions of Juliet Tilney and Jonathan Darcy and the school friends and other people around, they also fit. So it's a nice entertaining mystery. It's just a lot of fun. So that's a total recommend. So yeah. So that's it. That's what I had to say for my Jane Austen July / pile of possibilities / wrap up. Which is what happens when I guess when I film a pile of possibilities in the middle of the month. Well, it's not quite the middle. You still have time to join. So anyway, that's it for me. If you've read any of these books and you have an opinion, let me know in the comments what you think. And if not, it's okay too. You can talk about something else. And I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine.